What's up, YouTube? My name is Derek Peterson. I'm with Saturday Out West. I'm joined by Spenser Davis of Saturday Road. And Spencer, we're going to talk about Notre Dame football today. When I think about the Irish in 2021, the image that sticks with me is it was a video, multiple images. So it's Marcus Freeman telling his team that he's going to be their new head coach, and the team goes absolutely berserk. Like if that was all-time Twitter moment, because I think it says an awful lot about that team, about where it was, about how it feels about its new coach moving forward. They obviously keep Tommy Rees. They've got Marcus Freeman now, first-year coach. No more Jack Cohn, which, as somebody who I would categorize myself as being as far from a Conehead as you can possibly be, I feel like that's a big deal for Notre Dame. You might disagree, which is fine. I'm sure we'll get into the quarterback discussion. But FanDuel set the win total for this team at 8.5. I feel like you got some thoughts on that. Are you going over or under?
I'm going over, and I'm going over comfortably. Look, I mean, this roster is loaded. Well, let's talk about the roster, and then we'll hit the schedule.
Sure.
The roster's loaded. Yes, they have to replace Kyle Hamilton and Kyron Williams, who was an under-the-radar running back the last couple of years. It was awesome, both in the passing game and in the rushing game. Kyle Hamilton, first-round pick. But, man, they return a lot of talent. Like, they've got an All-American in Michael Meyer, who's coming back. They've got Avery Davis. They've got a really good running back in Chris Tyree, who I think is going to seamlessly fit into that Kyron Williams mold. They bring back J.D. Bertrand, who had over 100 tackles last year, Isaiah Foskey, who had 10 sacks, and basically all their other leading pass rushers are also back this season. And they went and added one of the best transfers in the country, regardless of position, with getting Brandon Joseph from Northwestern to replace Kyle Hamilton at safety. So with the roster, I see it as loaded, with the only question being at quarterback. And I'm pretty bullish on the quarterback. I mean, Tyler Buchner had a good spring. He looked pretty good at times last year whenever Jack Cohn couldn't go, or if it was garbage time or what have you. He still has to beat out Drew Pine, but I expect him to do that. Drew Pine did not look very good in the spring game, to put it politely, which Tyler Buchner did not play in because of an injury. But yeah, I expect Tyler Buchner to win that job within the first couple weeks of fall camp and not really miss a beat, other than that first game in Columbus could be a little tough. But when I look at the schedule,
real quick.
Yeah.
Before we get to the schedule, I want to ask you I just want to stick on the quarterback for just 1 second. So going into last season, so much of the talk with Jack Cohn was like, he's going to give them this game manager, this guy that's going to be able to make that deep ball, this guy that's going to be able to make the explosive play happen. And I watched him at Wisconsin, and I would never categorize Jack Cohn as a quarterback that I could trust to create explosives in my offense. Like, I wasn't a Jack Cohn guy. Yeah. What did you think of that offense under Jack Cohn last season, and how much do you think it changes with a new quarterback, but still the same offensive coordinator?
I definitely think it's going to be better this year. For one thing, like, Tommy Rees is young, right? Like, I think that there's a chance that he is just a much better offensive coordinator this year. Not that he was bad last year, but they never really got their receivers involved on like a volume basis last year, right? I mean, they had a few guys. They had Kevin Austin. They had Lorenzo Styles, and Lorenzo Styles is back. Avery Davis. But like, their main pass catching threats were Kyron Williams out of the backfield and Michael Meyer at tight end,
which is pretty much what Jack Cohn has been throughout his entire career. Like,
right.
That's what he was.
And so, we'll see if Tyler Buchner can, figure out a way to get the receivers involved, or if he's going to still lean on the running back and tight end positions. The other thing with Tyler Buchner is that he's pretty fast. He can run. He's a lot more mobile than Jack Cohn. I think that's, fairly evident. That will change the complexion of the offense, at least a little bit. And then, we'll see which of the receivers can step up and maybe make this offense a little bit more vertical.
Okay, now we can go to
because so the schedule.
They opened with a very, very tough game.
Yeah, well, let's start with the easy ones, right? Let's build the floor for this win total that currently sits at 8.5. I see 7 automatic wins. I see Marshall, Cal, Stanford, UNLV, at Syracuse, at Navy, and Boston College. You could quibble a little bit, like Syracuse, might be a little bit frisky. At Navy might be tough. We'll see. Notre Dame usually gets up for that game.
The one that I would quibble with would be Cal. just because of Justin Wilcox, not because of Cal's talent, but because in
Yeah.
like in a one-off setting, I feel like Justin Wilcox can do some stuff that's going to make you sweat a little bit.
Yeah. But
But
that game is
they're still going to win that game because I don't,
yeah.
you know.
That game is in South Bend too, so that helps. Like if that was on the road, then maybe that goes down into probable wins, which I only have 2 probable wins for them, at North Carolina and at BYU. Mostly because those are road games. Although I'm pretty bullish on North Carolina this year for whatever reason. I like them as a bounce back candidate. And then
For
who knows?
reason.
Well, I mean, they were so disappointing last year, right? Like there's no conventional wisdom really as to why North Carolina with a new quarterback after the program legend leaves in Sam Howell, that like there's no reason for them to be better this year than they were last year. But it seems like that may happen. And then BYU, who knows what you're going to get from them. The tough games, and there are 3 of them: at Ohio State, at home against Clemson, at USC. Okay. Notre Dame needs to win at least one of those. And I don't think it's going to be in Columbus. So they really need to find a way to split with either Clemson or at USC. Clemson obviously also does not necessarily have its quarterback situation figured out. That game is, I believe, November 5th. So that's late in the year. The USC game is also in November, if I'm not mistaken. How do you see, you cover the Pac-12 and been following USC this whole offseason. What do you think, is a reasonable expectation for that game?
Yeah, that game is November 26th. It's the last game of the regular season for them. I saw Ari Wasserman of The Athletic call USC basically Tesla stock right now. The market is just absurd with USC. I mean, if you look at FanDuel's game lines, USC is a 2.5-point favorite in that game, which seems, even though it's at home, it seems a little weird. Like surely they'll be playing better in November than they will be in September, right? You could say the same thing about Notre Dame under a first-year coach. And does USC have the better quarterback? Probably. We'll see when Notre Dame gets started if Notre Dame has a better team. I mean, Notre Dame is a team that I see a lot of people talk about with the college football playoff, and just like knowing USC a little bit better as I do, like I don't think USC is a college football playoff team. I think they're a team that's like going to be like a top 10 team at some point in the polls, but I don't think that they're going to be. They got holes. So like that game's definitely, you don't put that in probable win category for Notre Dame. You don't put that in, likely loss. I mean, that game will be interesting. It'll be very interesting, but I think you're going to get a good idea for what like the back half of the schedule is going to look like by the way that they play Ohio State to open, because that Ohio State team is going to be nuts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that Ohio State game is, I don't want to say it's going to tell us a lot because it might just be meaningless, right? I mean, Notre Dame could easily lose that game by 2 touchdowns and then go off and win 10 of the next 11, or even, 9 of the next 11. And if they do that, then they still clear this win total, which is why I like Notre Dame so much, at 8.5 wins. I mean, FPI has them at 9.1, so it's not too far off. But I just think this team is so much more talented than almost anybody on the schedule, right? I mean, like the Clemson game, that would be the one where I circle and say, okay, if Notre Dame wins that, then we're probably talking about a New Year's Six bowl team at a minimum. College football playoff, like again, they're probably getting blown out week 1. And even if they just lose, respectably, it's tough for Notre Dame to make the top 4 at the end of the year with a loss on its resume, as we saw last season. So, I just to close out thoughts here, just to go back to something that you led this show with, I think program morale is very high with Marcus Freeman as the head coach, and that stuff usually translates, and at least in year 1. Now we'll see 2-3 years down the line, Marcus Freeman does have to translate into being a great football coach in the way that like a Lincoln Riley did at Oklahoma, in a way that Ryan Day did at Ohio State, and Marcus Freeman still has to prove that. But I think he will. And I think year 1, especially, I expect Notre Dame to be a top 10 team nationally and to win at least 9 or 10 games this season.